So let's talk about how Trump lost, or how I think he lost, I guess. So Biden, I mean, this was predicted. I mean, we talked about it here a lot, is that Biden just had to breathe. I mean, he just had to exist. He had to exist. Biden, the last thing Biden did was win this election. The last thing Kamala Harris did was win this election. I mean, Kamala Harris, for being the ultimate Yas queen, again, she was at, 2% of votes during the primaries before she dropped out of the race. You know, she herself shit on Joe Biden during the debates. You know, it's not like these two are bringing a lot. They actually are bringing nothing, if you really look at it, because they can't do anything that they were running on. So what are they doing? You know, like, what do? What they just sat there, and they were the people on the ticket. I mean, Kamala Harris tweeted out a video about equality and equity, and everyone should end up at the same place, and which is the work. I mean, it's almost comical how no one held her to that. She's basically saying that no matter who you are, no matter what you do, everyone should end up in the same place, which doesn't sound very cool. It sounds pretty awful, actually, but no one really gave a shit. Honestly, this was not a Biden or Trump thing. This was pretty simple. It was either, do you like Trump or do you not like Trump? And there was a poll, I think it was on CNN, maybe on Fox News. I get the coverage mixed up now, but it was something like 49% of Biden votes in the exit polls were voting against Trump and not for Biden. And when you think about that, and there was another poll where it was like 66% of Democratic voters, one of the top two things they were focused on was the personality traits of the candidate. And Republicans were like 85% the economy. You know, it was just wild. But this was 100% a pushback on Trump. Now, you can argue the reason for the pushback, as far as was the pushback fair, really no. As far as Trump's presidency. Trump's presidency, pretty good. Economy is, at points, you could say, probably the best economy in American history. He defeated ISIS. I mean, ISIS, the Middle East, I don't even think exists anymore. I mean, I haven't heard about the Middle East in years. He defeated ISIS. He went through a global pandemic. I mean, that's something that very difficult, and we're staring at a possible vaccine very shortly. We'll talk about that, but he's done a lot. Shrunk unemployment. 56% of Americans in polls said that they feel like they're in a better spot than 4 years ago. I think any small business owner and any 401k haver would say, yep, everything's looking pretty cool. And if COVID doesn't happen, then he probably just runs away with this thing. There's really probably nothing that they could have pinned him on. I think for the first time in probably my lifetime, we had 4 years of relative peace as far as wars or as far as any kind of international conflict. He got us out of a couple bad deals. I mean, you can't deny that strictly for the country, he was pretty successful. Now, where did Trump fail? Trump failed in couth. Trump failed in his personality, his tweets. He failed at being a likable guy, I guess. I mean, you run that risk when you are as much of a cult of personality as he is. Some people don't like him. Some people do like him. I've been pretty vocal about I don't like him as a person, or as far as his Twitter's personality. It's not for me. I didn't buy into the whole Stone Cold Steve Austin badass leather jacket. He's fighting the swamp people. That really didn't really do it for me. So he missed me on that, but I loved his policy. I mean, I loved what he was doing for the country. I thought the country was fine. I mean, I think it's pretty unfair to pin COVID on him. I think it's pretty unfair to pin the deaths on him and all of that. So, I just think that the pushback as far as that was probably unfair, or at least undeserved. And a lot of it was, I guess, the media. I mean, I guess the media, I would hope that the media wouldn't have this kind of impact. They obviously did. But the negative, I mean, Trump got 4 years of anti-coverage from every news source besides Fox News and all the right media. But every media, and this is a huge theme for me on this presidency, is that albeit the Biden won, I think we saw a huge pushback on kind of the woke, kind of like that whole idea. I think that's kind of over. It's almost dead, I think. I think you're going to see a lot of that moving forward. I think a lot of the super radical ideas, defund the police, stuff like that, Green New Deal, a lot of the socialism talk, a lot of the socialized medicine talk, I think a lot of that is going to go away. And I think the media picked a lot of that up because, hey, I mean, they want the strongest narrative possible. And those are headlines written for them. But I think that they realize that that's not going to work, and they being the Democratic Party. So what does the media do? I mean, I think the media goes away, honestly. I think this was the last straw of, is the media still in the middle? Are they presenting the news? Are they presenting facts? Are they presenting this? They made a very, very easy decision, or a very obvious decision, where they said, we're not going to do that anymore. I mean, you could watch CNN. I mean, just the things that Jake Tapper and Anderson Cooper and, just Van Jones. And I mean, they are openly rooting, openly just bashing anything and everything Donald Trump. And people just don't respond to that. People didn't respond to that. People don't like that. And I think you're going to see CNN, MSNBC, places like that. They're either going to completely change their tactic of claiming to be something they're not, or they're just going to go away. I mean, what do they do now? What do you do now that there's no Donald Trump? What the hell do they talk about? I really don't know. I don't know. I mean, like, the Harry Potter books ended once Voldemort was defeated. We didn't get 5 more books of peace and happiness and no Voldemort. They needed Trump. They needed strife. They needed the big bad guy. They needed this demon. And I don't think they can withstand not having him. I really don't. Not to mention, Biden's presidency is going to be pretty much nothing, in my opinion. I think it's going to be a gridlocked, pretty dull couple of years. And you got to remember, too, this is the first time in my lifetime, maybe the first time ever, that we have a president who's going into a term with 0 chance of running again under his own accord. This isn't like he's ran his 2 terms, or this isn't like he's going to resign or anything like that. You're talking about 4 years where he knows he will not run again. So the first 2 years is going to be where he really can do stuff. But what is there to do? As long as they're with the Republican Senate, there's really nothing for him to do. The only thing that Biden really can do that will impact, me and you and everyone else, is how he handles regulation with COVID. Will he shut down the country again? What will his COVID relief look like? What will his COVID task force look like? That's really where he's going to make his mark. Beyond that, there's not much for him to do unless we deal with some kind of strife that we can't foresee, like another terrorist attack or another virus. I mean, stuff like that we don't see coming. But as far as his decisions, virtually nothing. Then after that 2-year period, everyone's gearing up for the election. Everyone's gearing up for who's going to run, who's going to position themselves in the Democratic and Republican parties. And you're talking about in 2024, we're going to have like 40 nominees. I mean, you're going to have all the Republicans, then you're going to have all the Democrats all vying for their nominations with no incumbent. And it's going to be wild. But in my opinion, Trump got trumped. Like, Trump did this to himself. The same reason that Trump won is the reason he lost. Without Hillary Clinton, a lot of Trump's, a lot of his bravado just fell flat because there was no bully. People loved to watch Trump bully Hillary Clinton because she deserved to get bullied in a lot of people's eyes. She deserved it. They wanted to see the Clintons finally get what was coming to them. And Trump was the guy to do it. Without her, though, all Biden had to do was not do anything. And Trump, it was almost like like the stand up to a bully thing. It was like the opposite. It was just like, don't go to school. If you don't go to school, the bully will probably just get bored, I guess. And people will just think he's an asshole. And that's kind of what happened. I mean, I don't know how much I believe in the whole Arizona flipping because of Trump's negative remarks on John McCain. I don't know how much I believe in, Trump's remarks on John Lewis, flipping Georgia. I think there's a lot more to that. Just like Stacey Abrams. I don't think Stacey Abrams was as much of a factor in Georgia as a lot of people believe. And we can get into that later on. But I think Trump just ran out of gas. And I said this during the vice presidential debate. I think that Mike Pence would have probably won this election. Because I think all the people that went out and said that we had two different kind of votes. We had the anyone but Trump vote, and then we had the only Trump vote. And that was like the two radicals going at it. I think if you had Pence instead of Trump, I don't think he would have garnered the same anti-vitriol that Trump did. And he might not have lost this thing. And, Trump, I think he was the necessary thing to stop Hillary Clinton, and that was pretty much it. That was pretty much where he existed and pretty much his use. Beyond that, I don't think there was any. I think people just started to sour. The people in the middle or the people close to the middle just soured enough, and then the super violent, super radical anti-Trump people obviously came out in droves. Mail-in ballot helped too, obviously, but that's why I think Trump. There was a lot of factors that led to Trump losing, and I don't think any of them are a rigged election.